So it's been a while since the end of Vlogmas, or at least it seems that way to me, because I pre-filmed the last couple of videos because I was going home and the internet connection at my home is not great and I didn't want to take my camera home because it's heavy and my suitcase was already really full. So it's been about 2 weeks since I filmed the video. Obviously I cut off my hair. I cut off about 10 inches before anybody comments on that. I just kind of was ready for a change, and so yeah, I did that. But today I have probably one of my favorite videos to film at the beginning of a new year, and that is my best and worst books of 2016. So I'm gonna start with the worst books. I don't actually own any of them anymore because, as you guys know, I purge a lot, and if a book gets rated less than 3 stars, it doesn't stay on my shelf. So I have my handy dandy little list, which will be, yeah, I can read that. I don't have my glasses on because I do know that the reflection from the light is quite annoying when watching and a little bit distracting. So I'm gonna try. I don't have any contact solution right now. I went to go like pop my contacts in and I realized I don't have a case or solution for them, so I'm just gonna go blind today. And yeah, hopefully I can read this. So the first book is Ariel by Sylvia Plath, which it doesn't have a rating on Goodreads and I won't rate it, but it's basically, I hated this book. It just, I have so many conflicting feelings about this because just the way that Sylvia Plath, like, I loved the bell jar. I thought the bell jar was fantastic, and then Ariel was just so, no, not a fan. Very anti-Semitic, very like weird relationship with Jewish people, as well as like very like her treatment of people of color in general just not great, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. Next up is The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood, and I DNF'd this one. I couldn't get through it. I just thought it was so tedious and dull and I didn't care, and I was 100 pages in and I still had like 250 more to go and I was like, I can't do it, and I just put it down. I really don't remember much of the plot. I just remember being really just bored by it, bored to tears by it. And like, I love it, Handmaid's Tale, but I think that's so far the only Atwood I've actually enjoyed, and that took like a couple rereadings for me to enjoy it. So I think I'm gonna give up on Atwood. She's kind of become a little controversial recently. If you're like up to date on like Canlit stuff, she's made some poor choices at the end of 2016 and fallen a little in my estimation as a person. This is the problem with reading authors who are still alive, is that, you know, they can still screw things up. Next up is Vinegar Girl. I think it's by Anne Tyler. I didn't write down the authors on this, and I can't look it up on my phone because I'm too blind to do that right now. This was a retelling of The Taming of the Shrew, and I thought it was absolutely awful. It was one of the Hogarth ones, and I was so unimpressed with this and just so genuinely disappointed with this, because I think The Taming of the Shrew is a really interesting Shakespeare play. It's really psychological. It's very like in modern interpretations can deal with women issues, and this didn't. It just was absolutely awful. And then next up was The Dud Avocado by Elaine Dundee, and I think everybody who I know on BookTube who has read this has not enjoyed this book. And it was so, it was just so, there's no words for it. It just sucked. It just straight up, it was annoying, it was frustrating, and it just wasn't enjoyable, and I do not recommend it. I did have somebody who saw my initial review subtweet me and say that she was in a right strop about this review and how dare I upset this book and like disparage it, but you know what? I didn't like it. I thought it was crap. And then the last one is Brody's Report by Borges. I forget the full like name, but it is Borges, and it was my first one and I really didn't enjoy it. I thought it was misogynistic, drivel and shit, and just, yeah, it was not a fan. But now into books that I actually enjoyed. So in 2016 I gave 9 books 5-star reviews, so I'm only showing you 5, and I picked, I think, the best 5. I tried not to repeat authors. I do have 2 Dickens on this list because 4 of my 5 stars were Dickens. There is a Hardy, there is a Bronte, there is a Trollope. Basically, they're all Victorian, which sums up my reading year. I will talk about this in my like goals video, But yeah, I read a lot of Victorian lit this year and just kind of need a little break from that. But so my favorite, I gave 2 of Anthony Trollope's books 5 stars. This one and The Last Chronicle of Barset. But I decided this one was my favorite. The Last Chronicle of Barset got a 5-star because it tugged at my heartstrings and it made me cry. This one I just absolutely adore, and it is Dr. Thorne. It is the 3rd book in the Chronicles of Barsetshire. I do highly recommend reading the entire series, but if you're only going to read one, this one I think is the best. I absolutely adore this. I think the story of Frank Gresham and Mary Thorne is just absolutely lovely and completely wonderful, and I love this so, so much. I mean, I love the entire series and cannot recommend it enough, even though it does have a bit of a slow start with the warden, but it is quite short, and then it gets into the greatness that is Trollope and his witticisms, and I do highly, highly recommend this. Next up is my Hardy, and I had a hard time choosing because I had 2 5-star Hardys, The Woodlanders and this one, which is The Return of the Native. But I decided that Eustacia Vi was the better heroine over the heroine in The Woodlanders, and I remember this story much better, so I think it's sticking with me much better. This is Hardy at his finest, I would say. I think that this is arguably my favorite Hardy, and one of his lesser known ones, and I think more people need to read this Hardy because I think it's so fantastic and so it's everything that I love about Hardy. I mean, The Woodlanders is fantastic for that as well because it's very, unsettling, but this one more so. I definitely absolutely adore this. Just think it is fantastically written and just such beautiful prose, and just, yes, read this. Next up is the Bronte, and it is Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I think this was the only Bronte I read this year because I read Villette last year, and I'm fairly certain that made my top list. But yeah, I just adored this. It's so good. Female friendship at its finest, and just like, it's so good. So good. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend this one. I don't know if this is my favorite Charlotte Bronte. I think maybe Villette is my favorite Charlotte Bronte, but this is definitely up there with my favorite Brontes. I mean, to be fair, pretty much all the Brontes are my favorite, except for Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, which I think are just overrated, but Shirley, absolutely fantastic. And it's great to find a book that kind of focuses more on female friendship over romantic relationships, even though the romantic relationships in Shirley are important. It's really the female friendship that's kind of the backbone of the story, and that's what makes me love it so much. So then I have my 2 Dickens, and they're both really hefty, and so I was trying to decide, and my Dickens are favorites because one on emotional level, and that is David Copperfield. I just adore this novel. I think this is my favorite Dickens novel of all times. The emotional connection that I felt to the characters, just absolutely everything about this. It's so wonderful. Betsy Trotwood alone makes this my favorite Dickens novel. And the way that Dickens writes is fantastic. And the fact that you kind of mature along with David, and it's so wonderful. There are some things about this that, are so, but I had such an emotional connection to this book that it is my favorite Dickens. And then, on a technical standpoint, because I think that this one is absolutely brilliantly written, and I think out of all of Dickens' novels, this is the best written novel, and that is Bleak House. Now, if you're starting Bleak House, persevere. It is a bit disorienting when you first start it. It does have a dual point narrative. It switches between, I think it's second and third person, if I'm remembering, or first and third. But it gets a little confusing. There are a huge cast of characters, unlike David Copperfield, which kind of just follows one narrative strain and doesn't have too many side shoots. This has all the side shoots, and it has all the strings, and if you follow them to the end, you will be justly rewarded. I read this earlier on in the year, and I absolutely adored this, and it's so fantastic. But I think on an emotional level, I connected more with David Copperfield, and on an intellectual level, I would say Bleak House is a superior novel. So yeah, I had to include 2 Dickens, guys. I read so much Dickens in 2016. So those are my best and worst books of 2016. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite books were. I'm gonna be trying to read a little less Victorian, although I will try and finish off the Dickens that I have left to read, but I will see you guys in another video. Bye!